A poem from Italia, from Venezia. Il piove, the rain. It falls on nuns and noblemen, bakers and bankers, gondolieri e carabinieri, pesce e pescatori, on the stone faces of lions and virgins. It falls down and down, under the waning moon and morning church bells, past the elegant shop awnings and the shuttered windows of sinking palazzos. It sings into the ears of songbirds and sleepers, and enters the veins of grand and humble canals in the calles, piazzas, and fondamentas. Il piove, il bello piove. Welcome to the latest floating poetry broadcast, and thank you for leaning in to the 64th show in my ongoing weekly series. Coming to you live one last time from the freshly rain and wind-washed lake country of New York State. This is your poet and poetorialist Colin Goedecke, a voice for living our days more poetically, more expressively, more soulfully. Last week we took a trip together to the moon and the stars, if you were on the ride, to places lunar and stellar that many found intriguing, many found enchanting. This week we're going to bend together into the wind, go out into the rain, engage our forefrontal to subtle senses with the visceral and lyrical, ephemeral, and memorable aspects of these elements, the visible rain, the invisible wind. So let's breeze in, pour ourselves into some dimensions, varied poems and musings I've intuitively chosen for us, and see what discoverings or stirrings we get to. I thought we might enter in with the different types of wind. I knew some of them. I didn't know all of them. Do you know the many types of wind? This is from a website. Actually, I'm not sure what this website is from. It's a physics website. Types of wind. Planetary winds, trade winds, the westerlies, and then there's a set of periodic winds: monsoon, land breeze, sea breeze, mountain and valley breeze, and then local winds. So here's just a nub on a few of them. Planetary winds comprise winds distributed throughout the lower atmosphere. Trade winds also are known as tropical easterlies. The westerlies are known also as shrieking 60s, furious 50s, and roaring 40s. They blow from the subtropical high-pressure belts toward the subpolar low-pressure belts. And then we have the periodics, the monsoon winds, which is the temperature difference created by the Indian Ocean, Arabian Sea, Bay of Bengal, and the Himalayan wall forms the basis of monsoon in the Indian subcontinent. Land breezes, of course, blow from land to sea, but they carry no moisture, but are dry and warm. And sea breezes blow from the sea to the land, carrying some moisture. Local winds include the sea and the land breeze created due to the pressure difference between the air over the sea and the land regions. So I went from that. I said, well, there's all sorts of, I guess we would say, good or welcome winds, and then there are damaging winds. There were some interesting ones. A downdraft, a macro burst, which is an outward burst of strong winds at or near the surface with horizontal dimensions larger than 2.5 miles. A microburst is sort of the obverse of that. A gust front is the leading edge of rain-cooled air that clashes with warmer thunderstorm inflow. A haboob, and by the way, this is from Severe Weather 101. A haboob, H-A-B-O-O-B, is a wall. You're going to hear that word later in a poem, actually. A wall of dust that is pushed out along the ground from a thunderstorm downdraft at high speeds. And then Merriam-Webster had some lyrical and other colorful kinds of winds to tell us about. There's the Scirocco, a hot desert wind that blows northward from the Sahara toward the Mediterranean coast of Europe. How about the Aeolian wind, I've always been intrigued by that. It's related to Aeolus, the Greek keeper of the wind and king of the island of Aeolia, described in the works of Homer. It literally means, in Greek, ancient Greek, giving forth or marked by a moaning or sighing sound or musical tone produced by or as if by the wind, or, quote, born, deposited, produced, or eroded by the wind. Like that. How about, that's very poetic. Zephyr honors another god of the wind, Zephyrus, Greek god of the west wind, but it can now refer to any light breeze. And then wuther. How about wuther? W-U-T-H-E-R. It is a verb from English dialect that doesn't see much use today. It means to blow with a dull, roaring sound, encountered almost exclusively in the title of Emily Bronte's 1847 novel, Wuthering Heights. How about that? And just a few more notes on all that is the Macmillan Dictionary gave a few more beyond these. Berg wind, B-E-R-G, like iceberg, but without the ice. In South Africa, it's a hot, dry wind that blows from the center of the country toward the southern coasts. The Chinook, if you've probably heard of that, a warm, dry wind that blows on the eastern side of the Rocky Mountains in winter. A monsoon, that could be a wind that causes a monsoon. A whirlwind, a very powerful, dangerous wind that spins extremely fast, carrying away anything in its path. I don't think we want to be in the path of a whirlwind, or actual, or even a person. There's some people who are whirlwinds, aren't they? Mistral. Yeah, have you heard of the Mistral? I've experienced that in France over once. It's a cold wind that blows over the northwest Mediterranean coast when pressure differences funnel it through the Rhone Valley. The Mistral can be pretty rough. How about this one? A brickfielder. It's a summer wind in southeastern Australia that brings hot air from the outback to the cooler regions, named either for the red dust it used to spread over Sydney from local brickworks, or the fact that it turned the soil as hard as bricks. I like that one, brickfielder. And a kamsin, it's the Scirocco in Egypt. It's also the word there for 50, because the wind is said to blow for 50 days. Well, good heavens, imagine holding onto your hat for that long. And then the last two, a willowaw, a stormy cold wind that blows down mountains, and a willy-willy, a local whirling wind in Australia that raises small columns of dirt or dust devils from the ground. Like that. And there's actually one more, which is I'm going to share a little poem about the Etesians. It's an annual strong summer wind in the Aegean Sea. And I'll give you a poem about that because I definitely experienced that. Right now, I'll tell you that poem. This is from a summer sojourn in the Cyclades. I was there 2 summers in a row. And I was in the Aegean and the island of Kea, K-E-A. And I wrote this about the Meltemi, M-E-L-T-E-M-I, the Etesian winds. They chap the indigo skin of the sea, flirt with women's hair and sailors' halyards, confound ferry captains, rush up and down ravines, cool the baking backs of bare mountains, refresh the faces of farmers in valleys, silent beekeepers, beachfront waiters, ruffle the ears of wild rabbits, the downy chests of roving pheasants, blow low and dry across the Aegean, fan the islands north to south, and the undraped shoulders of a plein air poet, passing time under the sun and solitude of Kea. The Meltemi. I also spoke, I mentioned the Aeolian winds, and my older brother, Christopher, happens to be a Buddhist warrior monk, Hayashi Tomio, and he's been known for decades as the Wind Warrior. And here's a poem I wrote for him 5 years back on his birth, on his 65th birthday, actually. Man of Wind. Aeolian man, mover of air, elements, energies, voyagers. Changer of velocities, topographies, patterns, possibilities. Inspirer of myths, disperser of seeds, kinetic shaper of whirling dreams, and wonderings. Man of wind. He may be out there listening right now. I would like that. The Trade Winds is a poem of mine. It was the name actually also of an inn on the Cape Cod, Massachusetts. And here's a breezy slice of summertime and memory that this touchstone's back to. The Trade Winds. When you look out from the marine blue and white balcony of room 44, it's a view much like 1962 or 3, when Jack and Jackie summered next door. A view that takes you out over smooth green lawn and green, and down a descending curl of slow road and isthmus of sand and striped umbrellas to a wildly sparkling Nantucket Sound, squinting white with mid-afternoon sun. We savor the breeze bathing our faces. The steady wind cooled and salted across the water, its edges hinting of wood smoke and colored leaves to come. All these satisfying contrasts and continuums of shade into summer, of cool into kindled, and past into present, on a friend's wedding day, getting dressed as St. Andrews and Sans Souci guests at the rose-hipped close of summer. Well, I thought hurricanes deserved some air time, so to speak. And here's one of mine for Hurricane Sandy landing on the head of Manhattan. So you remember that was back in October of 2012. Hopefully you were not too wildly affected by that. Some people I know were. Hurricane, it's called. Atlantic, oceanic, tempestuous, a walloping cocktail. Marvelous supervillain. Great locomotive, whirlwind boxer, HMS Destroyer. A John Ford-worthy melodrama, rock festival, leering bellow, a smoking pipe, hard a blow, water spouter, roller coaster, tipping the Beaufort scale, tipping a 500-mile-wide hat over the bent heads of autumn trees and towns, buttoned-down cities, tucked-up citizens, hushing and humbling all. Hurricane. So we're talking about the wind. I'd love to bring some rain in to that. And from ofact.com, there were some facts that were, I thought, curious about the rain, the amazing shapes of the raindrop. Most of us think raindrops, they say, look like teardrops. They indeed look more like chocolate chip delights. The most diminutive are called cloud droplets, and their shape is round. Big raindrops are shaped like parachutes. Then there's rain of fish. In some parts of the earth, unusual things have been known to fall from the sky. It rains tadpoles and small fish in addition to other things. The, quote, rain of fish is normal in Honduran folklore. A celebration known as Rain of Fish Festival is feted consistently in the city of Lloro, as hundreds of living fish are found on the ground after it rains there in between the months of May and July. So right now, actually. That, rain of fish. Colorful rain. Colored rain is a type of rain which contains enough dust that is noticeable without utilizing a magnifying instrument. Kottayam region in Kerala, in India, encountered the red precipitation most as compared to any other part of the world. Overwhelming storms happened in which the downpour was shaded red, recoloring garments with an appearance like that of blood. Similarly, yellow, green, and black downpours were also reported. Imagine that, being in a colored rain, in a white outfit. How about rain on other planets? Rainfall happens on other planets in the solar system, but it's different from the rain we encounter here on Earth. There, it might be made out of methane, neon, and sulfuric, corrosive, or significantly iron rather than water. Rain on Venus is made of sulfuric acid, and on Saturn's moon, Titan, precipitation is methane rather than water. As for how much rain weighs, the actual non-metaphorical weight of rain is shockingly substantial. An inch of rain on an acre of land measures roughly 226,000 pounds, and in every minute, 1 billion tons of rain falls on the earth. Wow. Wonderful. If I wasn't having spring water, I'd love to have a glass of rainwater while we're going together here. There's much to be said, obviously, about all of these things, about the rain and the wind. And I'm wondering what associations it conjures up for you, just sort of immediately, sensate or otherwise. There's also much to praise about it, as poet Joy Harjo does here. In this piece, it's called Praise the Rain, from Conflict Resolution for Holy Beings. That's a collection of hers from 2015. Praise the rain, the seagull dive, the curl of plant, the raven talk. Praise the hurt, the house slack, the stand of trees, the dignity. Praise the dark, the moon cradle, the sky fall, the bear sleep. Praise the mist, the warrior name, the earth eclipse, the fired leap. Praise the backwards, upward sky, the baby cry, the spirit food. Praise canoe, the fish rush, the hole for frog, the upside down. Praise the day, the cloud cup, the mind flat, forget it all. Praise crazy, praise sad. Praise the path on which we're led. Praise the roads on earth and water. Praise the eater and the eaten. Praise beginnings, praise the end. Praise the song and praise the singer. Praise the rain, it brings more rain. Praise the rain, it brings more rain. Thank you, Joy Harjo. There's also something to be said about, I think, being caught in the rain romantically, and I could not help but think of Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers from that wonderful film, the musical film Top Hat. Maybe some of you would know that. Maybe some of you have seen that, or more than a few times as I have. And it's Fred Astaire. Isn't it a lovely day? The weather is frightening. The thunder and lightning seem to be having their way. But as far as I'm concerned, it's a lovely day. The turn in the weather will keep us together. So I can honestly say that as far as I'm concerned, it's a lovely day. And everything's okay. Isn't this a lovely day to be caught in the rain? You were going on your way, now you've got to remain. Just as you were going, leaving me all at sea. The clouds broke, they broke, and oh, what a break for me. I can see the sun up high, though we're caught in a storm. I can see where you and I could be cozy and warm. Let the rain pitter-patter, but it really doesn't matter if the skies are gray. Long as I can be with you, it's a lovely day. Long as I can be with you, it's a lovely day. Thank you, Fred Astaire. Yeah. If you don't know that, you should tune into him somewhere on YouTube or elsewhere. There's also, what about the musical, on a further musical note, the iconic scene of Gene Kelly singing and dancing amazingly in the rain from the 1952 film of the same name, which you remember begins, I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain. What a glorious feeling, I'm happy again. And so on, laughing at clouds so dark above, the sun's in his heart and he's ready for love. He says, let the stormy clouds chase everyone from the place. Come on with the rain, have a smile on my face. I'll walk down the lane with a happy refrain and singing, just singing in the rain. Love that song. Well, this is a poem actually composed in Bermuda during some serious weather. And it's also a play on the rum and ginger beer elixir that's well known there. And this is called It Was a Dark and Stormy Night. Rain-soaked, rum-soaked, ginger-beard, wool-sweatered, knee-socked, 895 miles out to sea, drinking in the weather. Well, I was thinking about the weather and very moved, motivated by it, inspired by it all the time, whatever it happens to be, as long as it's interesting, as long as it's, quote, atmospheric. But I was also thinking about, as you may, and feeling about the contrast of being in one situation while another set of weather's happening, either outside or around you, or you're in it. But I was thinking about being dry and snug when it's wildly wet and raw out, how delicious that is. And I'm sure you would have had that experience or will have it. This one of mine was in Tulum on the coast of Mexico one February. It's called Reading in the Rain. Our reader reclines under a warm wool blanket with a good book on a broad bed in a dry room by the ocean's edge, while through half-open windows rain falls all along a dark coast, out across an unlit ocean, falls for miles through the black, blustering, starless sky, down to over-sodden sand, comforting our lone reader under his blanket in his watertight room between the lines and dry leaves of his lamp-lit book. I discovered in my spelunkings for us the Rain Museum. I never knew about such a thing, and it's a repository for everything that happened under the rain. And it started with this. What is the smell which enlightens the senses and causes us to stretch our arms and breathe in deeply? Petrichor, Petrichor. Petrichor is the smell of rain. It is the smell of earth and plant oils, dust, and the wind, eliciting a timeless and primordial response of gladness. It has rained, thank God. It has rained and brought us sustenance and promise. With rain we will plant again. With rain we will keep going. With rain we will go inside and make soups and breads. With rain we will quickly pull on slickers and rush to get in the last hay cutting, or let it stand to dry off a few days if the forecast is kind enough. We breathe deeply to pull the petrichor deep into our lungs before the brief aroma wafts away under the advancing moisture of the good needed rain, for petrichor only visits when we have needed a rain to come, after all. For those of us who have guarded the rain, loved the rain, utilized the rain, and grieved with its evaporation from our yearly cycles, we wonder what could be better than rain. The Rain Museum is a journal about floating through droughts and dying of thirsty during floods. Very interesting. Well, the great poet Octavio Paz, on the interplay of wind, water, and stone, which is the name of this piece, Wind, Water, Stone, was in translation. Water hollows stone, wind scatters water, stone stops the wind, water, wind, stone. Wind carves stone, stone's a cup of water, water escapes and is wind, stone, wind, water. Wind sings in its whirling, water murmurs going by, unmoving stone keeps still, wind, water, stone. Each is another and no other, crossing and vanishing through their empty names. Water, stone, wind. Thank you, Octavio Paz. Here's Mary Ruefle's poem, Rain Effect. A bride and a groom sitting in an open buggy in the rain, holding hands but not looking at each other, waiting for the rain to stop, waiting for the marriage to begin, embarrassed by the rain, the effect of the rain on the bridal veil, the wet horse with his mane in his eyes, the rain cold as the sea deep as love, big drops of rain falling on the leather seat, the rain beaded on a rose pinned to the groom's lapel, the rain on the bride's bouquet, on the baby's breath there, the sound of the rain hitting the driver's top hat, the rain shining like satin on the black street, on the tips of patent leather shoes, Hokusai's father who polished mirrors for a living, Hokusai's father watching the sky for clouds, Hokusai's father's son drawing rain over a bridge and over the people crossing the bridge. Hokusai's father's son drawing the rain for hours. Hokusai's father rubbing a mirror. The rain cold as the sea cold as love. The sea swelling to a tidal wave at the tip of the wave white. Thank you, Mary Ruffo. And then Bob Hickok, poet Bob Hickok, relates the sound rain could have on our spoken language. This poem's called Toward Accuracy. And Bob spells his name Hickok. We're high enough that what I call fog might be cloud, not Everest high or Chomolungma, mother goddess of the world. If we named things what they are, our sentences would be monsoons, long rains of sound. Morning is, quote, the time I suspect I am a horse. Dusk, the, quote, light which treats our shadows like taffy. The number of times my name changes in a day, from, quote, looking at the world with eyes of wood rasps to, quote, feathers have replaced my bones, rules out the wearing of name tags. I wear a chalkboard, thesaurus, that book of whispers, of meaning sex. Quote, there's a woman who smokes a cigarette now and then, who picks tobacco off her tongue as something moves along the fault line of the horizon, knees pulled to her chest, her breath wearing a dress of smoke. Is one way I think of you when I think of you. And when I think of you, quote, wants to be a candle. Isn't romantic, but accurate. Wicked light leans in, away, writhes, to get out of, to leap harder into what it is. Thank you, Bob Hickok, for that. Well, how many of you, because I'm sure there are many books that have to do with the elements and the wind and rain and poems and stories, but I was thinking in particular of the great best-selling classic for a long time, The Wind in the Willows, by the British novelist Kenneth Grahame. Maybe you remember that great classic, first published in 1908. Wikipedia tells us that alternatingly slow-moving and fast-paced, it focuses on 4 anthropomorphized animals: mole rat, which is a European water vole, toad, and badger. They live in a pastoral version of Edwardian England. Well, in 1908, Grahame retired from his position as Secretary of the Bank of England. He moved back to Berkshire, where he had lived as a child, and spent his time by the River Thames, doing much as the animal characters in his book do. To quote, he said, simply messing about in boats and expanding the bedtime stories he had earlier told his son Alistair into a manuscript for the book. So, yeah. So we have books, so we have those lots of songs, of course, and then experiences and dreams. I'm going to actually have a poem about a wind dream. But here's one from Amsterdam back in 2001, spring. Came forth at that time, in that moment, this poem. And it began with, there's a Dutch word, B-U-I. I never quite get it right. I don't speak fluent Dutch, but it's bui, B-U-I. And zon, rain and sun is this poem. So it's a very particular kind of rain. Rain and sun. Amsterdam's alternating current, constant counterpoints, sometimes simultaneous, acting to moisten or glisten the canals and cobblestones, to quench or summon the flowers spilling from pots and boxes, to cork or uncork umbrellas, to keep the day wet and dry, fluid and fair. At play. Well, I, like you perhaps, for a long time, have been a lover of storms, especially thunder and lightning storms. So dramatic, so emblematic from my earliest memories of childhood, running out into the storm and watching the lightning flashes and everything else happening, the rumbles. So there's a friend of mine, Adam Van Doren, actually not far from, he's over in Cornwall. I think he's got a country place there. It's not far from where I happen to be right now. This is a poem about a painting he did called Storm Clouds. Beautiful painting. This was written in New York City when I was looking at the painting, 2015. Suddenly, thunderously, a great artery in the heart of the sky bleeds forth its beauty, wild, sea-like luminosities of greens, blues, hidden energies, pours forth its humors. And here's a micro poem. Midsummer Night Storm. Lashings of lavender lightning. That's it. More recent from my life on the coast of Rhode Island is a poem that I did in the winter, over the winter in Watch Hill there. And it's called Late Night Rain. I woke up to this rain and began writing this in my head first. The rain spatters into metal gutters, flows in cold runnels overhead, funnels in long gurgles down white channels toward graveled ground, forms a felt scaffold of water and enfolding water music around the 2 stories of inn I'm in that sits on high stilts above the wet earth, above the dark harbor, the dunes, and for now, invisible sea. Late night rain. Well, here's a question for you. Have you ever taken yourself out, dressed or undressed, alone or with someone else, and just let the rain soak you, like rinse you, flood you, fall over you? It's a fantastic experience, and I encourage you to try it. Maybe if there's lightning, maybe not a good idea, but without lightning. And I've done this many places and times, and it's sort of like a baptism, I suppose, small b, in a way, and a purifying experience and an enlivening experience. So this happened in 1 August a few years back. It's called a great rain. It rushes down from the suddenly ink-black clouds with a sheer waterfall sound, occluding everything else from hearing. A vertical river flowing in a fresh condensation, a watery syncopation of unstrung beads tinged with the color of the summer showering green leaves. A monsoon in miniature I stand under, as it quenches, washes over my upturned face, my thirsting self, the thirsting earth beneath my feet. A great rain. Well, a little bit of that, the song, Fred Astaire, isn't it a lovely day? But touch into your memories of being caught in a strong rain and wind. And I observed, I happened to be in a car watching this in Manhattan once, but there was a woman contending with the elements like those. They were very strong. And this poem came as I was at a light or at the side, just stopping to watch her, observe her. It's called Windblown. She navigates the wind-blown sidewalk like the wind-blown deck of a mid-ocean liner. Hand on hat on head, raincoat spinnakered backward, body tilted at a 90-degree angle into the steady gust blustering up from the Hudson, from the west and the wind gods on this freshly wild May Manhattan day. So paired with that is a poem that gives us a parasoled perspective, is how we call it. Under the Umbrella. This was in a March, New York City, rainy day. Under the umbrella's furrowed brow, the world is all bottom halves. Passing torsos and legs, hands holding leashes attached to dogs, hips, skirts chasing the wind and wisps of paper, waists and belts, trench coat buttons, tree trunks and white walls, fenders shiny with rain, feet shod and sliding by every which way, pavement passing under one black cloud, and a feeling that the only world that exists or can be experienced begins and ends at the edges of your umbrella, a kind of peripheral parasol vision, which feels circumscribed at first, then sheltered and comforting. It was a bit whimsical, I thought, and fun, and so that carried me over to, without rain we wouldn't have a lot of things, certainly living things, but we wouldn't have rainbows. How magical are those? And we wouldn't have windmills. We wouldn't need windmills. And as delighted to me as I am about rainbows, beyond them are far and near found windmills. And when I had a summer cottage out on the east end of Long Island, I had this imagining about the one that was in the middle of the village. And that's the name of the poem, The Old Hook Mill. Some of you may know that in East Hampton. The town's windmill is soon to set sail from the South Fork. Rigged now after decades of bare-masted waiting, this brown-shingled salt shaker with its white cloth blades, stands ready to pinwheel round and propel itself west at the first full gale. Yeah. Here's another flight of poetic fancy of mine. Apropos, as we're in summer picnic mode and season, I thought it might set you daydreaming or thinking of having a picnic. If you're not already having one as you're listening right now, you might be. It's called Picnic in the Air. Where gravity is suspended by late afternoon, leaving you free to picnic or frolic past sunset, moonset, at any altitude you desire, on deep cushions of air, round an awning-striped tablecloth spread weightlessly, elegantly, with cold, blushing bottles of wine, hard and soft cheeses, cow and goat from France and Spain, wildly crusty loaves of bread, whose crumbs drift off here and there on the breeze to feed peckish passing birds, wrinkled olives, ripe berries, sparkling water, bubbling laughter, and languid pleasure over the floating feast. Picnic in the air. And then I was thinking about the sounds of the rain and the sea, that water music, as I like to think of it and call it and feel it. Here's how I heard it once back in the Yucatan one day in 1999. Llover a cántaros, rain song. Rain castanets down onto outstretched palms, cooling the warm milk within the clustering coconuts. Rain dances down the slanted roofs of the plaster bungalows, plinking over the terracotta keys of sun and storm-softened tiles. Rain spills onto the sand in cold dimples and is blotted up like so much impermanent ink. Rain erases all color from the sky, blurs the horizon line, and obscures the ocean into a suggestion of Caribbean, like the aquamarine wash of a watercolor brush, wet on wet. Rain drowns out the surf, the songs of the birds, the drum of my heart beating, everything but the mumble of thunder and the sound of your voice, snug and happy in the shower. So, music, well, the wind has music too, doesn't it? We talked about some of the types of wind that have their sounds. And I was actually in the Wild Recital Hall in New York City, November of 2009, and I was listening to this group, Pradeep Panjali. It was a fusion of Indian jazz, very interesting. And this piece was called Wind, and as I sat up in the loge, and it was dark, and I was taking this in there, I was mesmerized by the feelings inside me and the winds of this music. And I wrote without being able to see, but I pulled a pen out and a piece of paper and wrote on my lap in the dark that moment this poem. Wind. The wind is hypnotic, exotic, erotic, persistent, insistent, exuberant, wind of entrancement, ecstasy, fulfillment. Wind. Well, obviously, as I do with all of my programs, I encourage you to bring all your senses to the fore, embodied, expressed, engaged, outer and inner, ever more fully to everything, including the wind and the rain and other elements, other natural elements especially. Let them enter you. There's a lot more feeling that can happen, and imagining, and inspiration, inspiring. This is for the senses, actually, this poem. It's called Taste. Taste the rain-soaked air. Feel the touch of summer sunlight on your skin, your limbs. Listen to the late-night planets arc with the stars overhead. Breathe in all the deep stillness of the dusk, the dawn. See the unseen, the living world of every inner sensed, everywhere intermingling elements. Well, I spoke about dreams, and I have you ever dreamt of wind? And I actually did have a very memorable dream, or other significant weather dreams. And if so, what were they, and how did they feel? So here was one that actually, it's called Big Wind in Hawaiian. It's Makani Nui, N-U-I. this dream. It's quite marvelous, and every time I read it, I kind of go back to that place. A wild gust of grassy wind pulls the green-pearled pen from my hand and flings it at the foot of a swell of turf. I move toward it, but a wall of wind rises to resist me. The more I advance, the more it repels. As I push down, slowly stretching out for the pen, cat's eye green, a talisman, I'm hoisted up off the ground and set back softly and squarely where I began. Then I'm kited up whole, even higher now, all clothes gone except my billowing boxers, kited up like a gull orchestral riding a current, and carried over the edge of a precipitous cliff that drops Dover-like 1,000 feet to the sea, where the great wind buoys and wavers with me before I wake from the dangling dream. But that. Well, sometimes I tell us about words that pair with whatever the theme is. So, from windfalls and windjammers and to windsurfing and from rain closets and rain checks to rainmakers, which are actually rain closets are indoor showers. But there's one expression, there's among the myriad ones that use those words, and wind. But the one that I like is this one, especially. It's called 3 sheets to the wind. I remember my father saying one of his favorite sayings, that swashbuckling man who had a way of using words and phrases and telling stories you loved leaning into, sailing through. Like his tall drink of water father before him, and I a way of telling since, too, all my own, and preserving expressions like these from extinction, endangered species like 9 ways to Sunday at 6s and 7s, the cat's pajamas, by keeping them not in amber, but in living color, on the page, in the air, filling various ears, doing my part for the best patois, to me, of generations past, and animating with it memories of those men and a piquant taste of their times. 3 sheets to the wind. Well, we're going to come down to sort of the last dimension of things here. I've got another handful of things for us if you like to continue listening and leaning in and floating through all of this. The atmosphere after rain. So we talked about petrichor, right? The scent and so on before, and the mood before rain is coming, that you know it's coming. But how about after rain? And there's a lot that's literal and metaphorical. Such particular qualities of after rain. And the Irish poet Derek Mann, Penhurst Place, the bright drop quivering on a thorn in the rich silence after rain, lute music in the orchard aisles, the paths ablaze with daffodils, intrigue and venery in the air. A l'ombre des jeunes filles en fleurs, the iron hand in the velvet glove. Come live with me and be my love. A pearl face, numinously bright, shining in silence of the night, a muffled crash of smoldering logs, bad dreams of courtiers and of dogs, the Spanish ships around Kinsale, the screech owl and the nightingale, the falcon and the turtle dove. Come live with me and be my love. Thank you, Derek Mann. From Central Park, New York, July of 2016, here's an after rainfall immersion of mine in the park. Early summer morning after rain. Stepping into the city after a night-long rain onto cool, wet cobblestones, into full, floating scents of moist earth, thriving green leaves, the lime musk of sycamore bark, the pale perfume of a run-wild rose bush, into quietly inviting feelings of freshness, lushness, everything washed down, washed clean, every planting overspilling, past puddles in the walking path, all clear and still, like the reservoir I circle softly round, but for the ripple of a bell from an old church tower ringing the morning hour across the water. Sip of rainwater. We had an awful lot of rain the last day, so I could have probably put some cups out or buckets and filled them like a well. This is Peter Everwine's poem. He's new to me. It's called Rain. Toward evening, as the light failed and the pear tree at my window darkened, I put down my book and stood at the open door. The first raindrops gusting in the eaves, a smell of wet clay in the wind. 60 years ago, lying beside my father, half asleep on a bed of pine boughs as rain drummed against our tent, I heard for the first time a loon's sudden wail drifting across that remote lake, a loneliness like no other, though what I heard as inconsolable may have been only the sound of something untamed and nameless, singing itself to the wilderness around it, and to us until we slept. And thinking of my father and of good companions gone into oblivion, I heard the steady sound of rain and the soft lapping of water, and did not know whether it was grief or joy or something other that surged against my heart and held me listening there so long and late. Thank you, Peter Everwine. But Pablo Neruda, I thought we should have him, for we poets and writers and filmmakers and other creators and all imaginers, the wind and rain are endlessly inspiring and interesting. And this is his The Morning is Full poem. The morning is full of storm in the heart of summer. The clouds travel like white handkerchiefs of goodbye, the wind traveling, waving them in its hands. The numberless heart of the wind beating above our loving silence. Orchestral and divine, resounding among the trees like a language full of wars and songs. Wind that bears off the dead leaves with a quick raid and deflects the pulsing arrows of the birds. Wind that topples her in a wave without spray and substance without weight and leaning fires. Her mass of kisses breaks and sinks, assailed in the door of the summer's wind. Thank you, Pablo Neruda. Think of the seasons and how the rain changes sensation or experience of them. But I think the sensation of them. So June, spring. June wind is Wendell Berry's short poem. Light and wind are running over the headed grass as though the hill had melted and now flowed. And in summer, the beauty of a gentle rainfall. This is one of mine. A soft afternoon rain falls on the skyward face of the pond, on the immaculate feathers of the swan floating solo, larghissimo, refreshes the grasses and willows, even more greenly glowing, openly weeping, fills the petite pitchers of wildflowers, bright orange between long dry straws of reeds, moistens the petals of purple loosestrife, ragweed, queenly lace, releases the bouquet of mosses, barks, and loam, brings coolness to the heat, freshness to the heart of the day, and a meditative water music to the midsummer stillness. Robert Bly, here's his Fall Rain. In the rain, the sodden leaf floor shudders faintly as if ruffling its feathers. It is the time when bark hangs from old birch and poplar trees like rags, and the moss gains new foothold on the sodden cedar trunk leaning out over the water. The husband in the damp bed covered with blankets dreams of aunts he has never heard of, dead grandfathers still alive, and strange earthquakes as they walk the street. Now on the roof the delicate rain whispers of wet sails falling over abandoned junks and ancient harbors of China, and of young women wandering in the rain to die, and it whispers of drowned bodies floating on the stairs of the lake floor, ascending to the eternal balconies of death, and of the souls of those of the First World War beneath the tangled metal, the buckles, and the ghosts of leather, ghosts of wooden wagon wheels, of shelled casings and bandages. Now the sound of geese is heard. Fall Rain. Thank you, Robert Bly. There's a wonderful old song from Shakespeare, actually, Twelfth Night. And I'd wished I'd seen it in person at the Globe Theater years back, but I did see it's on YouTube, it's findable. And it's The Wind and the Rain. And let's see if I can give you a little bit of that. When that I was a little tiny boy, with hey, hey, ho, 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 the wind and the rain, the wind and the rain, the wind and the rain. A foolish thing was but a toy. For the rain, for the rain, it raineth every day, it raineth every day. And on the song goes, that ends the whole play, actually, and all the players come out with a slow dance. Quite beautiful. So look that up. And if you need to know the exact link that I'm pointing to, you could pop me a note, and I'll let you know. Very charming. All right, so we're coming down to the last few now. Kenneth Rexroth is a perennial favorite, as some of you know, and both diverse and prolific in his poetry and ever resonant in my mind's ear. This is Falling Leaves and Early Snow. In the years to come, they will say, they fell like the leaves in the autumn of 1939. November has come to the forest, to the meadows where we picked the cyclamen. The year fades with the white frost on the brown sedge in the hazy meadows where the deer tracks were black in the morning. Ice forms in the shadows. Disheveled maples hang over the water. Deep gold sunlight glistens on the shrunken stream. Somnolent trout move through the pillars of brown and gold. The yellow maple leaves eddy above them, the glittering leaves of the cottonwood, the olive, velvety alder leaves, the scarlet dogwood leaves, most pointed of all. In the afternoon, thin blades of cloud move over the mountains. The storm clouds follow them. Fine rain falls without wind. The forest is filled with wet, resonant silence. When the rain pauses, the clouds cling to the cliffs and the waterfalls. In the evening, the wind changes. Snow falls in the sunset. We stand in the snowy twilight and watch the moon rise in a breach of cloud. Between the black pines lie narrow bands of moonlight, glimmering with floating snow. An owl cries in the sifting darkness. The moon has a sheen like a glacier. Thank you, Kenneth Rexroth. All right, The Wind. This is one of my odes. Is beyond wild tonight, howling and hurling itself against every outer surface, into every window crack and hollow crevice. I listen to it blow with the ears of a long-time sailor at sea, lying wide-eyed in his berth in a brawling gale, back in Captain's courageous days. A black-robed Bedouin bedded down in his tent during a mad, obscuring sandstorm, a haboob where even the huddled camels are swept from sight. An Eskimo alone in his igloo, sheltered from the Arctic blasts by layers of caribou fur and blue-white bricks of snow. An awakened man, blanketed under downy covers on a dark coast, body mindful of the unleashed, unleashable power of the elements that surround, and now and ever astound him. All right, next to last. An Ursula Le Guin poem, To the Rain. To the rain. Mother rain, manifold, measureless, falling on fallow, on field and forest, on house roof, low hovel, high tower, down swelling waters all washing, wider than cities, softer than sisterhood, vaster than countrysides, calming, recalling, return to us, teaching our troubled souls in your ceaseless descent to fall, to be fellow, to feel to the root, to sink in, to heal, to sweeten the sea. To the rain, Ursula Le Guin. How beautiful. And to close for now, this was for a new year. It was written the 1st of January of this year of 2021 in Watch Hill, Rhode Island. A first rain pours down clear and cold through the last hours of the first day of this new year. All the unclouded rainwater cleansing everything it reaches, blessing like a sacramental rain wine everything it touches, washing away old hurts and faults, griefs, regrets, purifying time and place, making way for life, this precious life, to begin afresh. Thank you again for listening in, floating and feeling in. And thanks to all my regular listeners, I feel you out there. And to all of you new listeners, your enthusiasm, all of yours matters. Adds spirit fuel as I seek to nourish spirits, uplift hearts, and spur greater self-awareness and aliveness with my poetic arts. If you appreciated this or other programs, donations are greatly welcome, makeable by PayPal or Venmo or directly through my site or by email to me at P.O. Box 1032, Westerly, Rhode Island 02891. Patrons interested in hosting me on part of their property as a poet in residence for several weeks or more, later this summer, fall, or winter, for me to shape a flight of poetic art in their surroundings and dedicate the creating to them, please reach out. Love to hear from you. I'm also interested in meeting kindred-spirited fellow artists to collaborate on projects from the musical to the theatrical, and producers, directors, or others seeking an especially poetic voice. All my live broadcasts are online in one floating poetry playlist as replays. I hope you'll lean in again next week, or soon again. Until then, dear listeners, here's to attuning your many senses to and appreciating with all of those senses all the music and beauty and harmonies, reveries, old and new memories of the wind, of the rain. Goodbye for now, and good spirits.